Welcome everyone to our expert series webinar. I'm Bryan O'Rourke. We're going to let people jump on the webinar that have registered in the coming minutes here. So we'll give you all a few moments of reprieve as we look at the good-looking panelists that have joined us today. And we're so looking forward to chatting with Chris and Luke and Dana today. So thank you for joining us. We were going, as everyone's logging on, we were all talking about the incredible vaccination rates in the United States. I think as of a day or two ago, almost a quarter of the United States was vaccinated, and 190 million doses have been given. The percentages of people over 65 are even higher. I mean, very, very high. So at the rate we're going, bar the variants and how we have to cope with that, I mean, we're very optimistic. So as people keep logging on, I just thought it'd be interesting background for people to be aware of the data I'm looking at in different parts of the country is extremely positive for those clubs that are prepared. There's a lot of business happening, even with some of the restrictions that are going on in certain geographies. A lot of the United States is open, and with these vaccination rates and people being diligent, I'm very hopeful that we have a great second and third quarter of this year and people start to rebound. So I know people are logging in. We'll give them another minute or two. We have a lot of people, some of them from around the world. Thank you so much and welcome. We have some great panelists today. I had to pay them a lot of money and promise things that I shouldn't have, but I did. And, we have the very notorious Chris Stevenson and the famous Luke Carlson, which is a great pleasure. As people are logging in, let's see what we got here. Give it another 30 seconds, if that's okay. Again, welcome. We're going to get the party started very soon. As you can tell, in my first life, I was a radio announcer. So able to just talk gibberish while people log in. All right, we have quite a few people that have logged in, so let's get started. Thank you and welcome. We appreciate you being here again. Our subject today is emerging from the pandemic and the application of great member apps and how they can help you drive revenue and, of course, enhance retention all in the same. This is part of our expert series with FITC and EGYM. We very much are appreciative of EGYM and their support for these informative sessions. If by now you don't know the intricacies of Zoom, I don't know what else to say, but in case you don't, you can do chat at the end of the event like we've done since last year. We'll do the Q&A, so please write down your questions. You can post them, but we'll answer those as we get to the end. Today, we're going to have 4 basic questions for our operators that we're going to delve into, so hopefully you'll find the conversation of benefit. Now, what's wonderful about this is all 3 of these folks are great colleagues and friends of mine. If you don't know Luke Carlson, he is the founder and CEO of Discover Strength, and that chain started 15 years ago. It's a very unique boutique concept that focuses on strength, and Luke has a chain of those out of Minneapolis, and now he's growing via franchising. So Luke, it's great to see you. Luke is also a very highly regarded speaker. I've been in China with Luke and seen him with his workshops and in firsthand seen him speak. He is a highly credentialed expert in fitness, strength training, ACSM. I could go on and on with all your certifications and the like, Luke, but thank you for being here and sharing your views.
My pleasure. Thanks, Bryan.
And Chris Stevenson, a dear colleague and friend, a CEO and operator of Stevenson Fitness for almost a decade, and now heads up Be Military Fit in the LA area. Another renowned speaker, presenter that has been all across the world. I've spent time with Chris watching him present in Portugal and seeing him present, in the United States quite a number of times as well. He is very credentialed, a very experienced operator and renowned for his Power Ranger stuntman gigs, which people know of him. It's his signature. Chris, and I would say with both of these gentlemen, Chris is on the board of IHRSA with me, which is fantastic. And Luke is joining the board this year. So it's a great privilege, Chris, to have you. And finally, Dana Milkie, of course. He is the general manager of EGYM North America now and has extensive experience in the space, both in an operational role, which he ran clubs, and in technology, where he has worked with ABC Fitness Solutions now, and of course, In Touch and advising other brands. So Dana, always a pleasure to have you and the EGYM team behind these things. Thank you.
Thanks, Bryan.
So without further ado, before we get into the Q&A, we all know that COVID accelerated the adoption of mobile apps. We looked at some of these stats previously in our other expert series reports. Dana, these stats just bear out the need for people to have a technology component to their service offering, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, one of the reasons why we kind of keep coming back to this is that the whole idea of apps is exploded everywhere, and fitness is certainly just one piece of that. But apps are everywhere; they're part of everyday life. And so us coming back to this is a reminder that it's not if you have an app, because you must have an app, and now it's how do you leverage that app and what can apps do for you and your business, particularly around fitness. So the explosion is everywhere.
It is. And what you just said, I think, is so important because technology is a tool. So you can have an app, but the question is what you brought up. How do you use it? Why do you use it? What specific ways do you use the tool? And we've touched quickly, we'll go through this again, the kind of simple ecosystem that operators and consumers think about with regards to apps, right, Dana?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, this is a little bit of grounding us back into some of the discussions we've already had. But really, when you think about when we think about from a vendor perspective or supplier perspective, what apps can do, we think of it both from the operator and the member side, right? So for members, they're really good about workout guidance and tips, the motivation and the training and support on that end. We've created a number of things that allow members to measure their results, which flows right back into the motivation component, make it easier for the members to interact with clubs. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that we think about from a member side when we're looking at that, and we recommend to the clubs that they do that as well. But really from an operational side or an operator side, we kind of look at, I guess, three main pillars. One is operational efficiency. What can you do there? The second is more around revenue and driving, whether it be new members or upsells. We'll talk a bit about today. And the last one is from a retention perspective. What are the things that you can do to engage? And so when we're thinking about that and helping clubs, those are the areas that we're really looking at. And those are the areas we firmly believe the more investment you put in from an app perspective, the better that app's going to be for your members and for you as an operator.
Yeah, of course. So now let's get into it with our guest experts and our operators where the rubber hits the road out there in the real world, Luke and Chris. We've put together 4 basic questions for conversation. And I'm very interested to hear, we didn't get into these answers in advance, so I'm very interested to hear what Chris and Luke share on these questions, because I think, Dana, and I hope you agree, this is the kind of stuff that, we really, how do you apply this? So obviously question 1, guys, how have your ideas of definition, retention, et cetera, changed during the pandemic? And how has that impacted retention strategies in your view? Luke, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I don't know if the fundamental definition of retention changed, but we've been dealt a challenge that's unique that most operators will never deal with again in the lifespan of their businesses, and that essentially a large percentage of our customers either went away, we no longer drove revenue from them. If we drove revenue, is via a completely different channel. And then retention to us became, how do we re-engage them in our 4 walls, or how do we create and drive revenue from other channels? So normally we thought about retention is how do we just close a little bit of a hole, this leak that we have throughout the year, and make sure that we retain a customer as long as possible. Well, now there's almost been a complete pause of that customer visiting our physical plants, and we needed to either pivot to other channels or we needed to find a way to re-engage those people. So I think the challenge of retention was a different challenge. The definition stays the same. So for us, all of this was rooted in the idea that we have to start with effort and action, because we knew that our efforts around retention, how we showed up from a customer experience standpoint, we were probably going to define our brand over these, last 12 months. And I think so many brands went radio silent, and that didn't maybe hurt them over the first couple quarters of the shutdown, because we were all shut down and almost everyone received some PPP. But the mindset had to be, what you do now, and by now I mean over the last 12 months or 11 months, is really going to shape what your retention efforts will look like coming out of this. And coming out of this was probably originally defined as, what does your Q1 look like? But now we could say, what does your Q2, Q3 look like? Frankly, what does your 2022 look like? There is a direct correlation between performance in Q2, Q3, and Q4 of 2021. And what did you do during the first quarter of your shutdown? And I'll make a really simple, concise statement and say, you had to look at your customers' problems, look at your customers' pain point and friction. If you could stop thinking about, what do I need to do? How are we dealing with furloughs? How are we dealing with layoffs? How much cash do we have? If you could get leaders and organizations to think about, how could we provide value to our customer? Those are the brands that won. So that's where the focus, I think, had to be over the last 12 months.
That's a great answer, Luke. Chris, what are your thoughts on this?
I'll share them, but really quickly, I have to share that Luke, on a panel way early in the pandemic, you said something really, really smart. And that was, they talk about pivoting. He goes, no, we've always sold the same thing. It's expertise. We're just delivering it differently. So I thought that was a really brilliant statement to remember what you actually do, your core purpose, and what you do. It's, maybe it's live, maybe it's virtual, but I thought that was really, really helpful, Luke. And I think probably in getting your team behind rallying and doing such a great job during the shutdown. I think what we've seen are sort of two approaches to retention, at least what we've seen. And one is clubs that just shut down. Some of the bigger clubs in our area, some of the bigger chains said, we're just going to shut down. We're not going to really offer a lot of virtual or other options, but we want to put a strategy in place that the minute we can operate like we always have, we get people coming back. So continuous communication and that sort of thing. And to retention, for them, it was, we know we're going to lose people. For us, retention is now getting them back as soon as we're able to operate like we always have in the past. The second sort of group of operators said, what can we do to keep members engaged by giving them digital solutions and virtual options or outdoor options, or things that we are actually able to do? So for them, retention was, we want to hang on to these people so they can continue to get healthy and more fit, and ultimately continue to pay. I mean, that's, at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we're continuing generating revenue. But so I thought those were sort of the two mindsets of retention that we saw in the industry. I know particularly with our brand, Be Military Fit, it was the second. It said, you know what? We literally, sort of to Luke's not assumption, but just simple, no, we're still going to provide the same thing, just in a different way, right? We provide our expertise. Be Military Fit said the same thing. So we're not shutting down. We're just moving our outdoor workouts to virtual. Same thing with another group we work with, the energy clubs in the UK. Same thing. So we're not shutting down. We'll just be training you and giving your group exercise and all that virtually. So that's what I saw throughout.
Chris, in my opinion, in our space, in our industry, but forget our industry, in so many industries, companies did a really good job in both of those paths. And they also did really poor jobs in one of or both of those paths. I think about where I get my hair cut. And I once had them tell me a couple of years ago, I'm sitting in the chair getting my hair cut, and they said, hey, did you know, I get my hair cut at a franchise. And they said, did you know that you're our highest revenue customer at this whole salon? And by the way, this salon is the highest revenue salon in the whole franchise system. And as I'm sitting in the chair, I thought, that's a little bit embarrassing that I'm getting my hair cut that often, right?
Your hair does look nice. It does look nice.
Haircut once every 7 days, and I maybe get an eyebrow wax every 14 days. And so I'm thinking, I'm your best customer. I'm your best customer. If best customer is defined as revenue driven, I'm your best customer. Well, when they got shut down, like everybody else, did I hear anything from them? Did I get a text message, an email? Did I get a phone call? Did I get a handwritten card? Did I get any type of communication? And of course, the answer is no. I mean, it was radio silence. I didn't hear a word from them. And I told this story once, and a group of business operators in all different industries said, Luke, you're being really tough on them. you're being really selfish, in fact, because that business owner was going through the biggest challenge that they'll ever go through. Give them a break. And I said, no, you don't understand. That's what we're talking about here. How do you actually navigate this and prevail on the other side of it is going to rely, your ability to prevail on the other side of it is going to rely on your ability to cultivate those customer relationships so that when you do get to the other side of it and they're open again, I'm so excited about how I was treated during that downtime. I didn't hear a word from them whatsoever. It was like we were completely broken up. And I think the brands, and I think brands in all different industries all around the world went radio silent during this time. And we had such a wonderful opportunity to actually improve our brand loyalty. So Chris, I love the way you framed up those two paths. And I think that it's not a matter of just choosing one of those paths. It's how do you show up in one of those paths and what's your execution look like in that path?
I think you're right. And like you said, some people did it very intentionally and did a great job. Other people chose a path, but it wasn't deliberate or really thought out. They just sort of done with hope, and hope is not a plan, obviously.
Yeah, no, hope is not a strategy. That's correct.
I would like to say that I know nothing about the barbershop analogy. I like the thought, but barbershops get zero money from me right now. So I'm gonna have to come up with a similar one that speaks to what Luke's saying, because I agree with that. What we saw early is that a lot of health clubs did a great job of switching quickly into survival mode, right?
Yeah.
Cutting services, cutting employees, getting like down to rock bottom from an expense perspective. But the missing component then was to say, okay, now that we're here, how do we begin to reemerge, and what is that going to look like, right? And I think the best of the ones that we've dealt with looked at that and said, you know, how do I continue to drive push notifications, right, to my high users? How do I set up challenges outside of my four walls? How do I develop and quickly launch a platform for virtual content using IntelliVideo and a lot of the other tools that are out there? And so I think our industry did a great job of that survival mode and just stripping out as much expense as possible. And the really good operators also said, look, we need to be ready when this comes out, and here are the basic things we're going to do. And I think utilizing apps and other tools, there are some operators out there that are doing well. But if you guys have any suggestions on another analogy I could use, that would be great, because the wasted on me, unfortunately.
Let's go to question.
Not that I'm bitter, Luke. Don't worry.
So given your answers to question one and your thoughts, gentlemen, what role is your perspective on digital when it comes to, you know, current and go forward strategies and retention? And, you know, I think we addressed some of the problems it solves, right? Connectivity, you know, engagement, et cetera, with your prior answers. But what is your vision, Chris, when we talk about the role of digital? And you've used digital in your prior businesses and your various clients, et cetera, in your business today. So tell us your view on that.
I think Dana hit the nail on the head. It's engaging with people outside of the four walls. And we were, you know, the pandemic had places closed down long enough that prior to that, if Luke would have said, Chris, can I train you via Zoom? I'd have said, no, you're a creep. Like, that is just weird and not normal. Now people wouldn't think twice about doing a workout via Zoom, whether it's with a group or with an individual. I think it's even, interestingly enough, I had a trainer who worked for us at one of the previous clubs we owned and operated. And I asked her on a Friday, I said, hey, what are you up to this weekend? And she said, oh, I'm gonna Skype with my college roommates and we're gonna drink. And I'm like, that is weird. Anybody who drinks like via the computer with people, you've got a real issue. I did, just so you know, when this all went down, I reached out, I said, hey, sorry, you were absolutely right. This is a thing. But it is engaging with people outside the brick and mortars. We're shut down. They know they can work out outside. They know there are other options. They know they can do things digitally. So how do we provide the brick and mortar for when they want it, but keep that relationship ongoing by engaging with them when they're outside? So I think, Dana, you might have mentioned, you know, how do we get them involved in challenges where we're still tracking, encouraging them when they're not in our club. So it's not just about what do you do when you come in, it's what you're doing and how we're a part of that. So it's your brick and mortar provides a certain role, but on top of that, how do we create sort of an entity that holds you accountable, is supportive, is encouraging in all aspects of your health and fitness?
Yeah, great answer.
Yeah, and delivers that expertise that you and Luke were talking about, right? So how do you take that expertise and extend it? Because even the most fervent of workout people are only going to be in our clubs, you know, 14 to 15. I mean, that's max 14, 15 hours. there's so much more of the week and the time and the month. So how do you bundle that expertise and not only provide it internally, but externally? And I think that was one of the key roles that digital played during the lockout. So it is bundling up that expertise and sharing it in a meaningful way.
So I would say that the way Bryan started, he hit the nail on the head when he said, I'm going to paraphrase, that COVID didn't actually cause, the last 12 months of this pandemic didn't cause any change. It just accelerated changes that were already happening. And in some sectors, we saw acceleration. We saw literally, 10 years worth of acceleration or growth take place in one quarter. And so we've seen this acceleration of trends that were already there. And the acceleration of the trend that existed in our space is this, because the fitness brand of the future is an omnichannel experience. And so we know that it's almost become a cliche right now. Some of us have fought it for the last 12 months, but it's the reality. But I think to take that a step further, it's not just that your brand has to be omnichannel. You have to think about, what is our value proposition? What are our differentiating capabilities as a company? And how do those show up in a number of different channels? That's the question. Not just, am I on a few different channels, but do I have a consistent brand experience across the channels? I don't just mean logos and colors. And is the value proposition, whatever our differentiating capabilities are, how are we making money on them throughout the different channels? Those are the rich conversations that every leadership team, every executive team, for every club company, around the world should be having, and frankly, probably are having right now. And this is such a great, exciting opportunity for us to innovate around this.
Yeah, I agree.
One of the things too about, even from my point of view, I've always been a big customer experience guy and the human touch and all that, which I think will always be important, but we're realizing how technology equally is important and digital solutions in creating a great experience. And I was thinking, one hotel I went to during lockdown when had innovated, and all of a sudden, this was already starting to happen in the industry, a little in the hotel industry, but you went to a kiosk, right? So there may have been 2 people working, 20 kiosks. You checked in using your phone. The phone either became the key or it printed out your key based on your phone. The phone was the remote control for the TV in the room. You'd never spent using actual cash. You just charge it to your room or via the phone. Then when you check out via your phone, and then you get your survey on how your experience was via that technology. So in looking at that, I'm like, I liked that experience. So previous, I might have said, oh, I might miss somebody being smiley and friendly and everything. And that's still important. But I think fitness needs to do that as well. When you can simplify the way people pay, they're going to buy more. When you can simplify the way they check in, make reservations, get solutions, it's going to make that experience that much better.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
And I think, so one last thing on what Chris has said, and then on the question too. I think the other thing, Chris, that you're getting to is, we feel like it gives that moment of contact that is necessary. It really gives staff and employees and us as operators the opportunity to really excel at that. So rather than just having a lot of, non-value added engagement, you're really honing in and focusing on that engagement that really adds the most value, right? To the individual and then to the operator. And so I think that's another piece where it frees up and enables that interaction to be, off the chart stellar service.
Agree 100%.
Yeah, the other piece about a problem that it solves, which is one that we ran across a lot with different operators, is if you weren't able to extend out and put some content out there, there was a lot of competition that was not your brand name out there. And so let's face it, one of the problems that we were solving for was how can we enable people to compete against the individual, fitness influencers or people just putting content out from their living room. So competition that was out there that was never out there before and maybe never taken seriously was really gaining traction. And all of a sudden you had to compete against people that didn't pose a competitive threat before. And so having that content out there was a really important problem to be solved that digital helps do.
Yep. So let's move on to question 3 now. Let's get into some specifics. So Luke, can you tell us of an effective technology used to drive revenue?
Yeah, so I love to think about technology in terms of driving revenue. So there's technology that reduces friction, which is incredibly important. There's technology that enhances stickiness, which probably drives revenue. I think those are both incredibly important. I think that's what so much of this conversation centers around. But I'm going to share with the really obvious one that occurs a little over 12 months ago when everything is shut down. We have 7 personal training studios in the Twin Cities market, and 99% of our revenue comes from one-on-one and small group strength training workouts. We're shut down like everybody else. We can no longer generate revenue there. So we're closed for 5 days. And over those 5 days, we get together and we develop what our virtual offering is going to look like. And at first we thought we were going to be closed down for 2 weeks. And the discussion, of course, is how much cash do we have over the next, those 2 weeks? And then we realized this could last for a long time. Well, I'm in Minnesota. I think maybe only California was closed down longer than we were. We were down for 3 months, open again, and then down for another month. So in 2020, we were closed for 4 full months. So we pivoted to virtual one-on-one personal training. We launched it, and within a matter of a few weeks, we were, from what we understand, the largest revenue one-on-one virtual personal training company in North America, because we got essentially all of our customers to pivot. And if you asked me 3 weeks before the pandemic, I said we will never do virtual one-on-one training. It's just not who we are. And it became it not only was our entire business, not a large part of our business, it was our entire business. And I had announced the day after we were closed down, we did a call with the whole company, and I said, when you wake up tomorrow morning, we are a virtual personal training company. We have burned the ships around our locations. All right. We are a virtual personal training company. This is not a stopgap. That's what we're doing going forward. So we drove tremendous revenue and didn't have a single layoff and didn't have a single furlough. Now that worked for us because that was already our value proposition. People purchased us because of expertise. We were able to continue that expertise just in a virtual environment. So and today we've been open for, of course, a number of months, all of our locations, and virtual personal training is still 31% of our revenue and continues to grow. And I think it'll be a part of our offering going forward.
That's great. Great story. Chris, tell us your story.
So there's a good example is a club that we consult with here in our area called Hardcore Fitness. And they simply push alert and send challenge alerts through their app, and you purchase them right there. So like when you talk about removing friction, when I can make that purchase that easily and that quickly, I'm much more likely to do it. So as to kind of complement what Luke said, when you can use technology to make it an easy spend, it's just that much easier. I mean, when I spend with my Apple Watch, I feel less guilty because it's not really money. It's just my Apple. I'm just clicking a button. I'm not really paying, right? My business partner and I, we were in New York and we went to Barry's because we wanted to try it out, Barry's Boot Camp. And she's like, oh, okay, I'll book it, right? So I'm like, oh, great. So, you put your card through the technology on file, you go there and you get, you're in your spots. And I was thirsty. They're like, oh, do you just want us to charge to your spot? I'm like, sure. And that's a cool hat. I'll take that. Do you want a smoothie when you're done? Do you want a smoothie waiting for you when you're done? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, cool. We'll put it on F8. Now, the good part about that was, I mean, literally, they just upsold me from one workout with extra revenue by like $80. I mean, it was ridiculous. But the best part was it was on her card because she had booked the workout. So she had ultimately ended up paying for it. But in all honesty, it's that easy. It's technology making, you get excited or somebody mentions something and all you got to do is not really pay because you're just clicking something on the app. So yeah. I think, in addition to the value proposition, it's just make it easy for people to spend money with you.
Yes. Don't ever go out to dinner with Chris because he always said,
yeah.
just wallet it,
Somehow your card gets on file. I don't know how it works.
Great examples. Dana, anything to add before we move on to question 4?
Well, I mean, obviously EGYM is all about this question, right? It's helping clubs with this. So, there's a million of them actually over the last 13 or 14 months. I think for us, it was the ability to quickly be able to, first of all, to be able to offer, a base member app to as broad a market as possible, to get as many people to be able to have that experience as possible was a huge thing that we were able to do quickly. And then really, when you think about what we do, we're very dedicated, and we've talked about this in the past, to an open ecosystem. So for us, the coolest thing we were able to do around virtual content was go out and partner with other people to say, hey, let's get this content out there. rather than, hey, let's figure out how we're going to develop these platforms and, do this and do that. We're like, who are the leaders? And I mentioned IntelliVideo, Les Mills. I mean, there's a bunch of them out there doing it really well right now. So because of our open ecosystem, we were able to plug those folks in really quickly and help clubs get to delivering the content, the virtual content, their own branded content really, really quickly. And I think that's probably what we've seen most effective over the last 12, 13 months.
Yep, makes complete sense. So as for our final question, and great answers, guys. Thank you again so much for being here. So tell us about, when it comes to technology partners and your experience in the industry space, what advice would you give the audience? Because, there are a lot of different solutions out there, a lot of ways to tackle these opportunities. Luke, what has been your approach? I think you and I have talked about a few of these things on other matters unrelated, but what has been your approach on this?
Yeah, so I always have three considerations. Number one, I want references from other people that are using the platform. So just tell me who else are your customers, connect me with a couple of them that are maybe the same size as me or a little bit bigger than me, so I can have that conversation. That's number one, get a reference. Number two, ask questions around scalability. As we grow, does this technology, does this platform grow with me? Or is the investment as we grow, does it work? So that's the second question, is can the technology scale with what you're doing? And then number three is think about value. So I always think about return on the investment or return on the capital deployed, but it's not just the capital, it's your time and teaching your team how to use a technology or use a platform. So how are we going to monetize this would be my third question. And everyone on your team should understand, by utilizing this technology, this is how we actually drive revenue. And if you can't understand that, and if you can't point to that in the P&L, then I would be cautious about moving forward. So it's those things. It's references, understanding the scalability, and understanding how we're going to monetize.
Makes complete sense, Chris.
So I would say one, we've got a lot of great salespeople in our industry. And I know that I've worked with great salespeople in many different areas, but make sure you also have a relationship with whoever's going to be doing sort of your onboarding and the support, because I've had both situations where I've had a great salesperson who then puts me in touch with whoever's going to help us implement and support us. They do a great job as well. And I've also had the opposite, where this person I had a great relationship who convinced me to buy, I now hate because we can't get this thing to work whatsoever. So I think that's an important piece to make sure, because, it's one thing to make the purchase, but it's more important, that it implements and does what it's supposed to. I would say another thing too is, like, if you take Bryan and myself and you take the technology knowledge spectrum, you have Bryan over here, and then you've got Stevenson over here, and you can guess which side Bryan's on. So when making the purchasing decisions, take the people who are going to also be using it on a regular basis, sort of your frontline staff who are going to be working the most with it. Because I think sometimes it's easy for, somebody to be all wowed by some technology, and then your staff is like, this is not user friendly. And you're like, well, it was to me. I'm like, well, because you're a genius, right? So we want to make sure that the frontline staff or whoever's going to be utilizing it on a regular basis really gets it and really understands it. And then I think also just making sure whatever you get does integrate properly with the other things that you use. So at a simplistic level, make sure if you're going to have a CRM, does it work with your membership management software? Just those sort of things. Make sure that everything works together the way it's supposed to.
Great answer. Dana?
Yeah, I was wanted to make sure that someone brought up the point that Chris brought up, because I think more and more what we've experienced forever, I think, in the fitness industry, but more and more, is that as a vendor, provider, developer, you can't do it all, right? It's very difficult for one company to have every single thing in their toolkit, right? So making sure that whoever you work with has really strong partnerships and integrations and APIs with the other providers that you have. So, I mean, I talked a little bit about this, and we talked a bunch about it and other things, but our open ecosystem is a result of that, the recognition that, look, MyZone does what they do really, really, really well. For EGYM Digital to come in and try to do that doesn't make a ton of sense, but going and working with the guys at MyZone makes all the sense in the world. So I think that's really important. Like, take a look at what your ecosystem and make sure that those pieces integrate. And then, the scalability and other things those guys talked about, I think are spot on.
Yeah. And get some good, reliable advice, from people that have been through this. I I talk to people all the time and do it happily for free, just to give them guidance, because it can be overwhelming, and you are being told a lot of things. And this is great advice that you all have given. But seek a call with somebody who's been through this a few times independently, or just send them an email if you know them, their colleagues. Great thing about this industry space is there's some very capable and intelligent people that are happy to give you a few pointers, and that could save you a lot of trouble. So that's a wisdom right there. Well, listen, we're going to do some Q&A now. Dana, do you want to talk about the offer right now before we jump into the Q&A thing, or a little bit about what's going on at EGYM?
Yeah, I mean, I think after this slide, there'll be, there it is. Essentially, one of the things that we're trying to do is we have a newsletter that we're putting together about a lot of different topics, kind of an education piece. So I want to make sure you guys get exposure to that. We'll be sending out, as we always do after these, we'll be sending out an email specific to the content that we talked about today. Also, if you want to reach out and find out, I mean, EGYM, for those that don't know, has hardware, software. We have a full ecosystem, so there's a lot of facets of EGYM. So if you want to learn more about that, you can reach out to the email on the screen. And we'll do some follow-up with everybody today to talk specifically about what you guys are looking for.
And by the way, thank you. Last time we had the webinar, you offered some time with me for a few folks to advise them at no cost. And I've had a number of calls with folks. So I hope I was helpful. Really enjoyed those chats. So thanks everyone for that. So let's see if we have some questions. So Luke, tell us a little bit more about your Discover Strength concept and what you're doing with anything else around technology with respect to that.
Yeah, I mean, so our technology play is pretty unsophisticated. When we made the launch, right, with our virtual personal training, it was either Zoom, it was Google Hangout, it was maybe FaceTime if someone preferred that. We probably used Google Hang the most, and that was the extent of the initial launch. The problem with that is there's no moat around it from a technology standpoint, right? We have no IP around it whatsoever, and it also lacks something sticky. So now, as we are a year into this, we look to find a way to make that experience a little bit stickier. Right now, or for the last 12 months, it's been really a tremendous amount of revenue on just using those platforms, Zoom or Google Hangout or Google Meet. Now, I will say from an eliminating friction standpoint, the first thing that we did to launch is we made it available to schedule online. If you couldn't schedule online and make that just absolutely seamless, it just was not going to work. So that was a big pivot for us. We're very much a concierge experience where we have people answering the phone around the clock and responding to email and text message around the clock to schedule workouts. And it became so much more seamless and more cost effective for us that people schedule all of those workouts online.
Yep. For both of you guys, Jamie, by the way, Jamie Hayes. Hey, Jamie, how are you doing? Welcome. Thank you for being here. Are you using technology and new member marketing at all for lead gen and new membership sales? Could you talk a little bit about that? You want to start, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, digital is such a broad word. Obviously, we're using tons of social ads to drive traffic. And from there on, we're cashless. Everything is going to be done through the app, all purchasing. And then we have the ability to push alert for specials, challenges, and all that. So, I mean, everything we're doing is digital. There's no paper in our new venture.
Yep. Yeah, Jamie, in our businesses, of course, we do a lot of lead gen for membership marketing and other of our businesses. And the lead conversions are good. I think right now, in any business you're in, it's really about understanding the audiences and having a well thought out funnel strategy so that you're not wasting money, and that you have a systematic retargeting program where you can warm people up and then convert them through, and monitor your conversion rates and investment to that. So we do that in a lot of companies and in our businesses. So it's a smart thing to do, but it's not. You need to make sure you're doing it the right way. Luke, do you have something to say?
That Bryan just described our entire marketing platform. I mean, everything we do is to get someone to download and land on a landing page, to be able to collect an email, to get them into a drip campaign, to get them the right drip campaign, to either nurture them or to move them toward a sale. It is, I mean, that is 99% of what we're doing, and anything we're doing social is just to get them into that funnel, to get the email, to cultivate the email list. Once you have the email list, you can sell, anything, you can make all the pivots, but that's kind of where it starts.
Yeah, and another thing I see that a bunch of brands don't quite do yet, some of them do well, is if a customer leaves or they freeze or they terminate even, is don't discontinue the pipeline there. Like have follow-on offers and continue to drip value to them. A lot of people are going to come back to you. That's often low-hanging fruit that people don't pay much attention to. So, that's really a good ROI if you do it right, Jamie. So thanks for that. Chris, could you?
Brian, let me just add two quick things. Is number one, I think you hit it right on the nail on the head. Understand who your customers are and where they're at, like what platform they are and how are you going to reach them. And secondly, don't fall in love with the paid component of it, because oftentimes you're just throwing good money after bad, but really look at, there's a lot of strategies out there that you can do for relatively cost effective. It's a little harder. You're going to do a little bit more work, but you don't have to rush to pay a bunch of money to do what we're talking about doing. You can do it really cost effectively once you understand who your customers are and where they're, what social platform they're on, Facebook, Instagram, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes. So another question, this is an anonymous attendee. Have you seen success with an older demographic when they're asked to keep up with these technology advances? This is a thing that I'll jump in here and please get your comments, guys. This is a thing that I think we went through this in one of the other expert series, Dana, where we talked about the technology gap. This is increasingly becoming a red herring. It's really becoming a red herring. You're always going to get people that have challenges with technology. I mean, crying out loud, I was having challenges setting up the Zoom call, and I'm the last person that should. So you're always going to have a little bit of that, just because of change, et cetera. But the most ardent users of Facebook as a platform now are people that are 50 and plus. So and the gap, because technology is getting easier to use in many cases, is really narrowing. But I leave it to you all to answer that.
Chris, I'll be very brief. I'll just say that when we launched virtual personal training, for example, we needed to make the marketing message visual, because we had a percentage. Most of our customers are 50, 60, 70 years old. And we had plenty of 70-year-old customers that heard virtual and thought, are we wearing virtual, goggles? And what are we actually doing, right? So we needed very pithy, short marketing messages and videos that went out that showed, no, you have a tablet or a computer at home, and your trainer's here on a tablet, or this is what it's going to look like. And those had to be short, and they had to communicate what it would actually look like, literally the equipment that the customer would be using at home. And then someone said, okay, I got it. I have a computer. I know how that works. I feel comfortable with all of those elements. But we didn't want to start with any assumptions, because the initial feedback we got is, I'm afraid to use the technology. And we thought, no, you have a tablet, you have a computer, you can handle it, you have Wi-Fi.
Yeah, I would, and to Brian's point, it's Facebook comes out and every kid's on it, and now they're off because their mom's on it, and then they go to Instagram, and now they're off that because their mom's on Instagram, so now they're on Snapchat and whatever's next, right? So I think there's just a little tiny bit of a lag time for that adoption, and we're so far along where when you first were able to purchase something from an app, people were like, the older generation may have said, no way, you got to fill out all the. Now you're one click on Amazon, everybody's used to it, so I think we're beyond those days. There'll always be a little gap, but I think everybody now knows, you can buy on. And by the way, technology is making it more simple as well. Like even on Amazon, my wife generally does all the shopping, and then I downloaded the app, a year ago, and I'm like, wait, swipe to buy. So I don't even have to really enter a credit, so it's so easy that I think we're not going to have that problem.
So Jenna Johnson just commented, and we've heard this, her 89-year-old mother just got a new iPhone, iPad, and Apple Watch. She's a tech savvy senior, and that's right. So look, we're at 45 minutes in. Dana, any final comments?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Brian, you might want to check your Amazon account in case Chris put that on file for his. Something I'd worry about.
Why didn't I think of
that? One thing that I would say is EGYM is a technology company across the board. And in North America, our real growth markets are in active aging, lifestyle, nonprofit, country club. And the four that I just named are all skewed towards 50 plus baby boomers, obviously with active aging, people over 65. And as a technology company, that is where we're seeing our biggest growth. And so whenever anybody brings this up to me, I just dismiss it as a false narrative that needs to die a slow, horrible death, because it's just not true anymore.
Yeah, I agree with you. Hey guys, thank you so much. Luke, what a pleasure. Chris, I think we have to jump on another call right after this. I'll be seeing you shortly. Dana, awesome as always. And thank you, audience, for being here. A great chat with some really knowledgeable experts, and we're very delighted to have had you. Thank you all for your time.
Yeah. Chris, Luke, thank you.
My pleasure.
Bye-bye.